many, many years ago. I had 2 children at the age of 17 and 19, and I came from an extremely wealthy family and thought everything was just there to do whenever you wanted to. And I fell into what I call the devil's den, and fell into cocaine and every drug imaginable, drinking, nicotine. And I did that for a very long time. Missed out on a lot raising my children. And approximately 12 years ago, my kids, both my son and my daughter, made me aware that I was going to become a grandmother. And that's when I decided that I had to straighten up. You know, it took a long time, but I had to be a good nana. I went to Christ and I asked him to help me. I was extremely messed up one morning, woke up and didn't want to be there. And I prayed to him and went to bed and woke up and never touched a drug again, never had a desire to have that drug again. Later on, I learned that I was delivered. I didn't know I was delivered at that time. And then I had a great awakening when I went to Christ Church of Orlando in November of '08. I was still drinking and smoking cigarettes and abusing both. And in November, I went to Christ Church and woke up to a whole new life. The Spirit is in the church, and everybody I met, I told about the church. It just hit me that I had to stop that too. And I asked the church to pray for me for deliverance at a prayer Sunday worship. And I have not had a drink since then. So that's 2.5 years. And 1.5 years the same with smoking. So I am free, and it's all through Christ.
As a child, I remember always feeling like I was living in a bubble due to the abuse I endured. I was oftentimes beaten with the buckle end of the belt until I was raw and bleeding and bruised, and it seemed to go on and on. It would never stop. For punishment, and that wasn't my punishment, but for normal punishment, I would spend hours on my knees at the bottom of the basement steps on a cold cement floor, and until my knees were raw. But I knew if I didn't stay upright, and I was caught, that I was going to meet the belt buckle again, and that's something I avoided at all costs. To get away from this reality I seemed to be living in, I would go to an adjacent lot that had pine trees, and I would just climb up into those trees from one to another, and in my bubble alone just cry out, and knowing nobody could hear me, but cry out and until I felt better, and then I would come with my bubble down, go back into the home, and whatever. It wasn't until years later, whenever I was about 16, that I actually came to know the Lord through a salvation experience. And it wasn't until after that that I realized that God was there with me all those times when I was an infant and a child, all the way through those teenage years. He was my friend, and he was in the bubble with me at the bottom of the steps, feeling my pain, and he was in the trees with me, comforting me. I just didn't know that the Lord was with me during those times. Years later, the hardest thing I had to do was forgive my mother for me having to be put through all that, and so I did. I called her and forgave her, but it shouldn't have been that difficult, because compared to the crucifixion that Jesus endured, the pain I endured really was nothing.
You know, at the lowest point in my life, down on my knees in jail, Jesus grabbed me by the collar. He stood me up. And He has loved me in a way that I have never experienced in my life. You see, I was the song leader's daughter for 42 years of my life in my church. My father led the singing. So I went to the Christian university. I served my country in the Navy. I got married and I have one daughter. And I didn't have a good marriage. And as a result of not having a good marriage, I had a bad check for $74.13, which produced a warrant for my arrest that I didn't even know about in 1985. So in November of 2008, the state of Florida knocks on my door in St. Louis, Missouri. They arrest me, they handcuff me, they put me on a plane. They bring me to Orlando, Florida, where I spent 137 days in the 33rd Street Jail. My case was thrown out and dismissed, which is a wonderful day. I'm released from jail in a city that I don't even live in. I didn't live here. So I was carried, fortunately, to a faith-based mission, and God gave me time to work on me. So the first thing I did is I repented. I repented to God. I repented before the church. And all of a sudden, my life totally changed. It totally changed. For me, being homeless was a horrible, horrible struggle. I had to walk everywhere for everything I needed. In this heat, it was truly an awful time in my life. And now I feel so blessed because I'm able to speak for the homeless in different avenues, in different venues, in front of different people for them. I volunteer every single place that I can. And I have learned one very important lesson through my entire journey. And it's very simple. It's not about me. I wanted to share my simple story with everyone, because at the lowest point of my life, Jesus was right beside me. He forgives. He talks to me. He blesses me. So on this Easter weekend, I'm extremely thankful that Jesus died on the cross and that He rose again for me. And it makes me want to shout hallelujah.
All around, hope is